Hello and welcome to The Rate Stuff, your essential guide to all things mortgage. I'm Jack Izzard.
And I'm Peter Stimson.
And as you may have noticed, that through the magic of time travel, we have journeyed back to the 1970s for this week's issue. So I'm wearing brown. Everything we ate for lunch was pretty much brown, Peter, wasn't it?
It was prawn cocktail to start, followed by fondue.
Black Forest Gatto.
It was a bit of double dipping from yourself on the fondue, I noticed, Jack, but you know.
I'm not sure what you mean by that, Peter. Anyway, the 1970s was a decade that many people would choose to forget. However, there are some very uncomfortable echoes of it going on at the moment. If you look at the economic picture, it's a little bit like deja vu for the 1970s. We've got an oil price shock, we've got soaring inflation, a Labour Prime Minister clinging on to power by his fingernails.
And soaring gilt rates, unfortunately, Jack.
Yes, now gilt rates is perhaps the key. Bad news for the government, putting a lot of pressure on the government and on the UK, but also bad news for the mortgage market. Stay with us as we unpack what that means for you and what that means for mortgage borrowers here on The Rate Stuff. Now, since we last saw you, things seem to have progressed, but they haven't really. So the Iran war is over, if you believe President Trump, but the oil price shock really isn't, Peter, and I think that's still storing up a lot of trouble, isn't it?
It hasn't. I mean, things have, you know, the war has stopped, but the Strait of Hormuz is still closed. The oil price is still hovering around the 105 to 110 mark. And it's going to get worse still unless something is resolved. I mean, America has been pumping more oil. China's been drawing on its reserves, which has been keeping the price down. But that can't go on forever or indefinitely. So at some point, the oil price is going to keep rising.
Yeah,
and we are going to face a crisis.
So we've obviously got all this supply that just hasn't got through. So the Strait of Hormuz, of course, it sees something like 20% of the world's oil and gas flow through there. And that oil and gas has not been flowing through it for 2 months now. And so we are going to run very low on supplies. That is going to start driving up prices quite rapidly. And of course, the worry for us in the mortgage market is what it does to inflation. Oil is a big driver of inflation. And we saw CPI in the UK of 3.3% in March. We're going to get the April data quite soon. What do you reckon, 4%? We could be looking at a big increase, couldn't we?
You could be. We've seen the data out of America a couple of days ago. America has gone from 2.3% in February to 3.8% in April. So they're the headline figures. When you look behind the scenes in America, manufacturing inflation's coming in at 6% now. Obviously, manufacturing inflation is a little bit ahead of where it comes out into retail, because obviously the manufacturing gate to the retail is kind of, you know, a couple of months ahead. That's at 6% now. So, you know, we're looking probably at a print around 4% in the UK. But, you know, it's obviously not just oil, it's, you know, food. Food in the UK has gone up 39% in the last 5 years. You know, you think about what oil goes into. It goes into packaging, goes into fertilizer. Fertilizer obviously goes into the production of wheat. Wheat goes into bread. It goes into all sorts of other foodstuffs. So, you know, you're talking potentially about a double-digit increase in the cost of food this year if this carries on or, you know, carries on much longer.
So that's going to be very painful for consumers. We've got this inflationary wave coming. And, of course, the impact on the mortgage market is through interest rates. Because what will the Bank of England be very tempted to do to keep that inflation in check? Increase rates. And we're seeing that in swaps now, aren't we? The swaps market is looking like there are more rate rises coming.
Yes, as we're doing this, the 2-year swap is at 4.34. That's got 2.5 rate rises into the curve. So June, I mean, if I was a betting man, I think it's 50-50 we get a rate rise in June at the moment, simply because the straits are still closed, simply because the inflation pressure is growing. So yeah, it's not looking good for mortgage rates at the moment.
Okay, so that's the inflationary side of the picture. That's kind of no change really from where we were a month ago. What we have seen erupt in the last few days since the local election results and the results in Scotland and Wales is this political crisis unfold alongside the economic crisis. And at the time we record this, The vultures are circling for Keir Starmer,
Yes.
and it looks like a leadership challenge is very much on the cards. And it's the uncertainty, the political uncertainty about, will we have a vacuum in Downing Street? Will we have a new Prime Minister who is much more left-wing? That is really rattling the international bond markets.
Yes.
And that matters to mortgages as well. So just talk us through that link between gilts and mortgages.
Yeah, it's simply the fact that, who we get in, will they increase the amount the government borrows? So increased borrowing means increased, prices on the gilts. Increased prices on the gilts linked straight across to swap rates. Swaps and gilts are directly linked. Higher swap rates means higher costs of borrowing for lenders in terms of having to swap out their costs. So basically, if it costs the government more to borrow, it's going to cost you more to borrow on your mortgage rate.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
So if we're looking at swaps, it's kind of a perfect storm. You've got that inflationary pressure from the oil.
Yes.
And then you've got that pressure from the gilt markets as well.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. If there's more gilts being issued into the market, buyers can demand a higher price. The price of the gilt goes up. There's pressure from the Bank of England potentially to increase rates because obviously the inflationary pressure. So, there's this kind of spiral upwards on that side of things. It's going to mean people's mortgage rates are going to potentially go up.
Peter, you paint a rather grim picture. It may not be as grim as that. Stay with us as we unpack how bad things might get and what it means for mortgage rates. Now, you don't need to have lived through it, and frankly, who would want to live through the 70s again? That awful music, that terrible food.
I did. I was around in the 70s, Jack.
Peter, okay. Well, were you really interested in actually, you know what? Why am I even asking that? I know you're really into gilt markets and swaps in the 70s.
Well, when I was in primary school, obviously it was my main forte. But anyway.
Peter, I can tell you've just always been drawn to mortgages and swaps like a moth to a flame. But anyway, the 70s, let's be honest, that they weren't a great period, and they certainly weren't a great period for the economy or for the mortgage market. Some of the numbers then, horrendous. We saw 25% inflation in 1975. We saw the gilt market soar, which put the government under huge pressure, and in the end, the government basically ran out of money and went cap in hand to the IMF for a bailout.
Yes.
It was a pretty humiliating time for Britain. Now, we're joking, of course, about making the parallels with the 70s, but it's not completely outlandish, is it? There are a few echoes, and if we look like a poor 70s tribute act, that's why. But let's be serious for a second. Could it really get that bad again?
Oh, I mean, you're asking me to project probably 3 or 4 years ahead, because I think we're a long, long way from that. I think at the moment it's kind of 70s light.
Okay, so more kind of taupe than brown.
So, so we're kind of a very light shade of brown at the moment. Camel, yes, exactly. There's lots of parallels that, we could lead to some form of stagflation, but we're not there yet. So
the economy is not stagnating. We saw the GDP growth.
No, so the economy is not stagnating. The point is that was March numbers. There's a potential revision to them. The worry is now we've obviously got April's numbers to come. Straits of Hormuz are still closed. There's all these things that could happen. So there's lots of coulds, but they aren't there yet. And that's kind of the worry. People are kind of, waving flags, kind of warning what could happen. We're not there. So, we've lived through the 70s. You know what the results are if you kind of make all these mistakes. So we're trying not to make, the same footsteps and kind of go down that route again. So,
learn the lessons of history.
Exactly.
Or be condemned to repeat the mistakes.
Well, there we go. Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. So, yes, inflation is an issue, but let's be honest, 3.3% in March, maybe 4% in April. It's not great, but it ain't 25%.
I mean, if everyone who's followed economics knows that inflation is an economy killer. Absolutely kills economies. Take a look at Argentina. Take a look at loads of countries that have failed to control inflation. Turkey's another sort of more recent example.
Okay, so, and of course, we know that the Bank of England now is independent and it will step in to stop inflation getting that high.
Yep.
But that means higher interest rates. And I guess my next question then is, how high might interest rates go? Because that matters to everyone watching who's involved in the mortgage market.
That's a very difficult question to answer, because I don't know how long the Straits of Hormuz are going to be closed and where inflation goes over the next sort of 3 to 6 months. I mean, we may get 1 or 2 rises later this year. I mean, my hope is the Straits open in the next, month or so, and this is a short burst that comes through. We kind of get inflation, peaking in the next 6 months. Come sort of September, October, it kind of we're off the back of it and it's coming back down again. And early 2027, we can be in a sort of a rate cutting agenda again.
Okay.
But it's really now dependent on resolving some of the key issue, which is the oil crisis that we're now facing.
Yeah. Okay. So if it's not the 1970s, is it a bit more like the kind of Liz Truss mini budget chaos? That's perhaps that's certainly something I remember. And is it as bad as that, do you think?
It's looking something similar, because I think you've got the gilts at and around the Liz Truss level. I mean, there's a slight dissimilarity which isn't being picked up. If you look where Liz Truss came in, bank base rate was 2.25%, it's 3.75%. So gilts are up at around the same level, albeit off a much higher base. So this was, say, 2.25 versus 3.75. So it's maybe slightly disingenuous to compare the two. It's going to be dependent, I think, without getting too political here, about who gets in, and assuming Keir is going to be replaced now, without wishing to condemn the guy, and where the markets view that person and view their fiscal responsibility. If the markets view them as fiscally responsible, it can bring some calm and probably take quite a few basis points off the gilt yields.
Yeah.
If they're not viewed in that way, you're going to get quite a bit added back on.
Yes.
So I think that it's really dependent on bringing some sense of calm to the markets.
Yeah, so that's the kind of the element of this that I think people are less clear on. It is just what the gilt element of it is.
Yes.
We've talked about the inflationary side, and as you say, look, if the oil starts to flow again, we could see that inflationary spike wash through. What we cannot tell at the moment is just what will happen in terms of the political crisis.
Yes.
Because those gilt yields are very high at the moment. As you say, they're back up to the levels that we saw in the Liz Truss era, and at one point they went back up to 2008 levels. That's how high they went in recent days. And the issue there is we just do not know what's going to happen here, because who might Keir be replaced by? How will the gilt markets regard that successor? That's a lot of unknowns there.
And Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer have been following a fairly rigid set of fiscal responsibility rules. If they get rewritten, that will cause a lot of angst in the gilt markets, and you will look at a fairly substantial rise in rates.
Okay, so I don't need to invest in a pair of flares yet, start growing sideburns. It's not the 1970s again?
No.
Okay, that's good. Is it 2022 again?
Is it 2022 again? Not yet.
Okay. Peter, you've actually ended up on a positive note here, because it was looking pretty grim there for a while. I guess the prudent thing to say at this stage is, so far so not bad, but it could get worse, and a lot of what happens now depends on what happens in Downing Street and what happens in the Straits of Hormuz.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I mean, a lot of it is outside of the UK's control, simply because it's an international problem. The other point is a real sort of UK political kind of issue going on at the moment, which will be resolved hopefully in the next few weeks.
Well, Peter, almost despite yourself, you ended up sounding quite positive at the end of the answer there, which I'm glad to see you do, Peter, because it was all sounding quite bleak for a while. But that's the macro picture. Let's just zoom in for a second to mortgage brokers, because they're at the heart of everything we do here on the rate stuff. Brokers are going to be getting a lot of concerned, nervous clients through the door in the coming weeks and months. And what sort of things should brokers be saying to either remortgages or first-time buyers in the coming weeks, do you think?
I mean, if you look at rates in the round, they are still pretty reasonable compared to where they've been over the last couple of years. If you go back, 2-3 years ago, I mean, rates were sort of significantly higher than where they are now. So it's kind of taking a view about where things are in the round is the first thing. So, it's still trying to keep a perspective on things relative to where they are. I think the other thing is, particularly if you've got clients that are looking to refinance, is don't just let them, or let them take the rate that the lender's offering them on a PT. Have a look around the market, because there are some pretty good deals out there from some of the lenders out there. So, it's use your expertise and just kind of, look at the options out there rather than just letting them PT. I'd say, whether that's a fix or a tracker or something like that. It's kind of, use your expertise to kind of search the best deal out.
Is there a danger that some remortgagers particularly will just be so horrified that they'll kind of say, oh, it's too scary, I don't want to fix now, and they'll just fall onto the SVR?
I think there is a danger that people kind of go, I don't like the fixed rate or the option I'm being offered by my bank, therefore I'm just going to do nothing. And to your point, yes. I mean, there are better options if you don't want to fix now. There's some decent trackers out there that will get you a pretty small margin over bank base that allows you to kind of just to wait it out with no ERCs to choose a fix as and when rates come down in the future.
Well, we always say, don't we, that it's when times are tough that a good broker really earns their keep. And I think now is one of those times, because it's not pretty for lenders, but as you say, a good broker can build a strong relationship with the client.
Yeah, it's about providing reassurance and about using your expertise, and this is where a broker earns his money.
Okay. Well, thank you very much indeed for watching this episode of The Rate Stuff. I've been Jack Izzard.
I've been Peter Stimson.
Do join us next time when we delve deeper into everything mortgage.